Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. Today, very excited to be joined by Glen Dall of the Apex North Business Coaching. Glen, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Greg. I really appreciate that you invited me to come on.
Sure. So we're going to talk about why EOS stops at 2x and what it takes to build a 10x company. A little short background. Glen
Mhm.
Dall is the founder and CEO of Apex North Business Coaching. He helps
Yeah.
CEOs and leadership teams scale their companies with clarity, confidence, and purpose. Glen, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your personal journey and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to, Greg. So I spent 25 years in a kind of a singular industry, which was doing a lot of marketing and promotional activity around consumer packaged goods products. So the kind of things, like you buy in a grocery store or Target, and kind of culminated that career with coming to a company in Minnesota called Insignia Systems. We did at shelf signage, mostly in grocery stores. And if you shop, you probably see these little signs at the shelf. And when I came in, the company had gone through some legal strifes and was, from a business perspective, wasn't doing that well. I ended up being promoted up into the CEO to lead a turnaround. And Greg, I've talked about this right before we went live, and it wasn't an easy situation, but at the same point in time, I felt two things. One, I felt a lot of confidence in the company and the people, and foundationally, I knew the business in general, and I really felt in my heart we could make a good go of it. Um, and I also felt like, well, I really can't fail too badly because it's already in a pretty bad position. So I've got kind of have nowhere to go but up. And but it really worked. We had to kind of make some tough decisions, make some tough people decisions, and really rebuild the team, kind of rebuild the company. But ended up kind of almost doubling the revenue of the company and really getting it
Wow.
back into strong profitability and a strong cash position. And a result of that, the company was acquired. There was a sale there, and so that was, it was still a rocky journey. I mean, I made pretty much every mistake in the book, but also did some things right along the way. And I think most of
Sure.
those things right really involved in developing a simple strategy about success, and in bringing making sure we had a lot of the right people on board the bus to make that journey happen.
Take me back a little bit to when you came into this role because you're the first turnaround CEO coach we've had.
Okay.
Maybe you're not coaching in turnarounds, but the first
Yeah.
CEO I've
Yeah.
talked to has gone through a turnaround. And like I mentioned before the call, most of the people, CEOs, you come in, you've got a pretty good company, you want to charge with taking the next level. Not a company headed on the way down. So tell me what it was. I mean, I'm sure there were good people there and you like the
Yeah.
people.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about what it was with the people that gave you confidence. And then on the flip side, what were you seeing in the business fundamentals that made you think, hey, we got a shot here?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg. I think there were in the people that were there, a fair amount of them was that they understood the business, and it seemed like a complicated business model. And it kind of was. There was kind of a lot of moving pieces to it. Most businesses are, though, and
Right.
there were some people there who really understood how that worked, and they've been doing it for a while. And what wasn't working is there was not the company had gone through some legal battles, and really the strategic goal was to win the lawsuit. And i- everything that occurred in the company was blamed, not everything, but many things were blamed on this competitor who the company was in the lawsuit with.
Okay.
So when that lawsuit came to an end, it was just kind of settled, like kind of 50-50. It wasn't like there was a clear winner there. um, the company was kind of drifting and had gone almost, revenues were about half of what they had been at the high point. There was a lot of money was being lost on a quarterly basis. There were a lot of people there with working there that really the company couldn't afford to support. The company didn't have the business. So I think the other thing that kind of helped us with me coming in, and I was relatively new to the company, I'd only been there a couple of years, is I had seen this happening as I was coming in, coming from a really well-run company, and being able to see like, wow, there's really a lot of things here that should be fixed, that could be fixed, and then being given the kind of autonomy and the authority to be able to do that. And so I didn't have the emotionality around the history and legacy of the business. And also at that point in time, we brought in a new CFO who was pretty professional and kind of had that same kind of pragmatic, non-emotional look at the business. So we were able to make some decisions that many people might not have been able to make
Yeah.
if it had been their baby, right? It would let a lot of people go. About a third of the company had
Ooh.
to be cut. And yeah, and then even on senior leadership, I needed to, there were some people that just, I didn't feel like were my team or part of my vision. And so I needed to kind of build that as well. And in having that, I think really helped us as well as like getting just kind of, let's get back to the basics. Let's get back on track. Let's focus. And we were able to pretty much not quite double the revenue of the company and made it very profitable and accumulate a lot of cash. So it worked.
So tell me a little bit about making those decisions. Even though you came in as a bit of an outsider, that, I mean, a third of the company, that kind of had to take a bit of an emotional toll on you.
Yeah, it did. But again, it was something that I had seen. I mean, and the numbers were there. It just wasn't, the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
And it was, I remember, we were in meetings as leadership and, people were making cases like, oh, we can't cut that many people and the work's not going to get done. Who's going to do the work? And it's almost sad to say it was surprisingly easy once we had the conversations. And I think one of the things it wasn't just, we had to let these people go, but it wasn't as if we're like, oh my God, we're wringing our hands and this is a dire, desperate situation. Because again, I was newly on the scene
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, this is a new company. And we actually even kind of came up with this thing. We called it, the company was Insignia. And we said, look, this is Insignia 2.0. This is like
Yeah.
the rebirth and rebuilding of a company. And by adopting that mindset, I think a lot of people were able to say, okay, I get it. Like, things are happening there. It's different.
Yeah.
And I think there were a lot of people, frankly, that liked it, that said, we were due for a change. And there were people who didn't. And,
Right.
those are the people who over time we kind of had to work through and maybe make some more, have some more tough discussions with. But really it was about getting the right people there for the right reason that were there for that part of the journey.
So as a cultural shift, and that when you made
Yeah.
that, it was probably easier for other people to leave, and they probably maybe felt like, I don't know if I can handle or keep up with this kind of company. I mean, that's a really strong point that you make there to kind of
Yeah.
make that shift.
Yeah, I think the comments, it's funny comments I heard down and I hear it now is, well, this used to be like a family and now
Yeah,
it seems too corporate. And I understand that. But I always go back to, well, the mission of a family is to stay together and love each other. The mission of a company you have to make money because without cash, a company dies.
the company
And
dies.
so they're very different missions and you just need to keep that clear.
Yeah, and I think I remember talking to a family business specialist, and he was talking about family businesses, and he said the biggest mistake family businesses make is you've got your family and then you've got the business. And there's overlap, but there can't be
Hmm.
too much overlap because that
Yeah.
emotional component will come in and it will cloud your judgment. And like you said, it's a business.
Yeah.
It's not like family where you'll stick with somebody through thick and thin no matter what.
Exactly right. Yeah, because if someone in a company is not doing their job, if they're not the right cultural fit and they're not doing their job, they shouldn't be there because they're just dragging everybody else in the company down.
Right, right. Well, let's move into get into that. Thank you for walking us through that
Yeah,
and
my
that
pleasure.
experience. Let's talk a little bit about even just the title of this, why EOS stops at 2x and what it takes
Yeah,
to get to 10x. Tell me a little
yeah,
bit about that.
yeah. Kind of a provocative title, right?
Yeah.
And I hope people don't take it too literally on like, oh, let's mathematically multiply this out. I think
Sure.
it's really more of a mindset. And in our company in Insignia, we did use EOS. And I'm very familiar with EOS, and I think EOS is a great system. I think one of the reasons it's really a great system is it's relatively simple, it's easy to understand, and relatively easy to execute. And I think it's a great system for most companies, or many companies, especially smaller companies, to really get a handle on their execution system. What it doesn't do, and this certainly was a limitation for me as a CEO, I found out as I grew the company, was it's not very strategic. And it really doesn't have strategic elements to it. And even from the people side of the business, I think there's a lot more around how we build the right team for companies as we scale and become larger. So that's the difference. And the part of the thing, reason I say it's, is EOS is a 2X system. It's I feel it's very incremental, which is good. So for
Right.
many companies who are just operate without a plan, we just come in and turn on the lights and we do what we do when we do. It's like, it's excellent to say, let's get some, basics in here. Let's get a framework in here. Let's, make sure the bus is running well. What I think, the work that I do and some of the more sophisticated strategic planning systems is really saying like, okay, now we've got a good running bus. Where are we going with it? And once you start saying, where do we want to go and where do we choose to go? To me, like, that is 10x thinking.
Hmm.
And that 10x thinking is beyond a goal of saying, and I talk to entrepreneurs who've started and grown a company and it gets up to a couple $1 million. And I'll ask them, well, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal for your company? They'll say, well, yeah, it's right there in our vision traction organizer that within 10 years, we want to be a $10 million company. Like, okay, well, good. That's nice. To me, that's a 2X goal. That's like, yep, we're going to make steady growth. And by this time, and it's all about the numbers. When I talked to someone who said, no, who has what I think is a 10X vision, like they have a $5 million company, they would say, I want to change the world as it relates to bringing healthcare to these individuals.
Right.
Or they have these really lofty visions. They're almost like, what do you think you're doing? How do you think you can accomplish that? Like, those are the people who I say, wow, that's inspiring. Can I help you do that? Let's talk about where you want to go. Let's talk about why you want to do that. Like, what is it about that vision that inspires you personally? Because there's usually a story behind it, and it's
Right.
usually very inspiring. And then, how do you think you're going to get there? And then, what will you have to do to get there? So
Okay.
that's, to me, that's a difference versus, okay, here's how we're going to do this kind of orderly thing, versus saying, what is a goal that most people would think, I can't even believe you're saying that. It's just ludicrous. You'll never be able to do that.
Yeah.
To someone who says, well, maybe not, but I'll die trying.
Yeah.
I want to do something that's just big and bold, and I need someone who can help me get there.
Yeah.
That's the difference between the 2X and the 10X. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, completely. So I mean, it could be 10x plus, really, is what you're talking
100%.
about.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, let's talk a little bit about some of the key elements you brought up in the show description. S- to get to that point, to get to the
Hmm.
10x plus, you need strategy, you need accountability, and you need the A players who can lead you. And I've kind of seen this recurring theme, Glenn, in your work and what you talk
Yeah.
about. You're always coming back to the A players, and I love that. Tell us a little bit why that focus is like it is, and what it is about strategy, accountability, and A players that is so
Yeah.
important to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Thanks for the question. So, there's a couple essential elements that a business needs to really do great things. Right? We need a strategy because we need to know where we're going. Because if not, we'll just drift and do anything. So, then we also need to be able to execute to get to that strategy, right? So those two need to work together, and there needs to be a plan that couples them. But ultimately, a strategy needs to get executed by people, and it needs to be the right people for that strategy and the culture, that culture of the company. And the ABC player, I used to think before, we always talk about people like, well, A players are the really aggressive go-get-ems, and then there's the B players who are kind of like the steady eddies, we would call them. And like, you need both.
Yeah.
And what I've totally changed that now. And what I really feel is like, they're the A players. Those are the people who exhibit the culture. They live the culture of that company day in and day out, and they nail their role. Like,
Mm.
they know their job and they do it and they want to do it better. And then from there, you have the B players who could be really high performers, but they're lower on the culture. They don't quite fit the culture. Those could be even BC players. And then you could have the people who, and Greg, if you've ever worked in a larger company, you've seen them. Those are the people who nail their role, but man, do they create carnage. They're a
Oh,
low culture fit, right? They abuse everybody around them to make
yeah.
sure they get their job done, right?
Yeah.
Um, Now, okay, so that's a C player, and they're just creating chaos in your company. People might quit because of them, because they don't like to work with them or for them. They shouldn't be in your company. On the other hand, there's the other people who are the high culture fits. And again, if you've been in a larger company, Greg, you've worked with these people, because let me tell you about Tommy. Tommy's been here 28 years. Everybody loves him. He makes everybody smile. Like, everybody loves him. Like, what does Tommy do? Yeah, not much. Right? Those people, like, yeah,
Yeah.
but he's been here forever. He's so loyal.
Yeah.
Like, well, of course he's loyal. He doesn't have to do anything. He gets a paycheck. Um, I call those people the golden retrievers, because they just,
Oh, yeah.
right, they make everybody happy, but they don't really do much. And we shouldn't have those people in our company either. We shouldn't.
Yeah.
Um, a company of A players is an A company. And a company that's not predominantly A players is not an A company.
Mm.
And if I start asking CEOs to say, hey, what kind of company do you want to build? Like, Greg, for you, what kind of company? Do you want an A company? Do you want a B company? Do you want a C company?
Yeah. I'm
Right?
going to go with the A.
You're going to go with the A. So I'm going to say, all right, well, then do you have an A team? Because it's just a paradox. You cannot have an A company without an A team of people.
Right.
And then once the CEO commits to saying, you know what, I want an A company, then I'm like, all right, let's start.
Yeah. Well, tell me about it, because there are a lot of companies out there that have the golden retrievers working for them.
Yeah.
Do those do okay? I mean, is that more of like a lifestyle business,
Yeah.
or they're just getting by and everybody's okay, or what, because there are a lot of golden retrievers.
I think you just said, Greg, the tone of your voice just said it. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of good companies, right? And there's a lot of good companies. They're doing okay. They're making some money.
Yeah.
And then there's some great companies.
Right.
And those great companies are the ones that we all go like, wow. And those great companies are the ones that are spinning off cash. They're reinvesting in their business. They're focused on strategy. They're coming out with just world-class products.
Yeah.
And we talk about them differently, right? It's kind of like going to a mediocre restaurant. Like, how was that restaurant? It's like, yeah, it was okay.
Yeah.
It was good. I'd eat there. I wouldn't go out of my way to eat there.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, in order to build that, yeah, you really have to have, and also you have to, as a CEO, you have to be an A player CEO. A non-A player CEO cannot build an A company.
Let's talk a little bit about that
Hmm.
before we get back to some of the other points, because that's intriguing. Tell me about an A player CEO.
Well, what would what are the hallmarks would you would say of an A player CEO, Greg?
I'm going to say visionary,
Okay.
very strategic.
Okay.
Um, it's got to have charisma.
Charisma.
Um,
Okay.
fantastic communicator.
Okay. Good communication. Yeah.
Um,
Are they accountable? Can we count on them?
yes.
Okay. All right. That's one that I would guarantee a lot of CEOs, and if you have any CEOs listening to this, like, look at yourself in the mirror and say, are you truly accountable? Do you do what you say you're going to do?
Wow.
Because if
Yeah.
you don't, then how can you hold anybody else in your company accountable, which is a
Wow.
lot of CEOs complain about a lack of accountability in their business. And that's where they need to look in the mirror.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I bet you run into it a lot.
Yeah, I do.
What?
Usually the people I work with though, they're two camps, right? They're the CEOs who say, well, I run into three types of CEOs. I'd say just generically, the ones who say like, "Oh yeah, Glenn, I got this. I don't need a coach. Maybe one of my
I don't
guys
need
needs a
you.
coach."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like, okay, God, okay, you got some problems here, buddy. That
Yeah.
you know. Um, then there's the other ones that are like, yeah, we need this coaching thing. We really want to do this and want to work with you. And what they think is, I'm going to come in and say, basically tell everybody what to do, which is
Yeah.
what that CEO thinks they need to do. That usually doesn't work out. And then there really are, there's the CEOs, and I don't know if you're familiar with Patrick Lencioni, who
Yeah.
wrote a book called The Ideal Team Player. And this is what I feel like the CEOs I love working with is they're hungry, they're humble, and they're smart. Right. And they're usually people that say like, I know this business, and I love this business and I've got a big vision, but I just can't figure out how to get there. I mean, I've been pick whatever profession, but I've never been trained in business. And I really, Glenn, can you help me do that? And we have the conversation and they say, yep, I'm willing to make the tough decisions and have those conversations. And I'm willing to build the right team and I'm willing to follow the process and, work through it. And I've got a couple clients like that I work with, and well, they're all like that if they're listening. Now,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
but when the clients who I've worked with over time who have really persevered, those CEOs who said, yes, I'm going to lean into this, and they've learned and they grow and they follow the system. Those are the CEOs who go from, wow, I don't want to grow my business because it just sounds like a whole lot more work, are the CEOs that then start saying, wow, what can I do next with this business? Or what can we do next? Because
Mm.
they've built a great leadership team. And those people love working for them because, they hold themselves accountable, they learn, they're vulnerable. And here's the thing, A players don't like working for B or C CEOs, right?
Oh, yeah.
But they love working for an A player CEO.
So tell me, that leads us into this next point. How to attract, develop, and retain true
Mm.
A players who own the vision.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think a lot of it starts with, before you even hire them, is educate them on the vision. Where are we going? And I always like to think about, if I'm hiring someone like Greg, if we're having a conversation and say, hey, I don't know if you want to join our company, let me tell you about where we're going and why we're going there. Here's what we want to build, this crazy thing, but here's what inspires us and why we're doing it. And here's how we're going to get there. We actually have a plan on how we're going to do this wild and crazy thing, this big, hairy, audacious goal. And here's the kind of people we need to help us get there. Do you want to join us? Because we think you might have what it takes, but are you willing to sign up for that? Right? I'm talking to you like that. That's a whole different conversation than I'm talking to you like, yeah, well, we've got this job and it pays X amount of money, and here's your job description, and you'll never see it again. But we just need people.
Right.
Which one of those companies are you more willing to join?
Right.
Um, yeah. And so that's one way. And the other thing was, you have to build that culture. Like if the CEO is really building that culture around that vision, and it's a culture of A players, it's going to attract other A players. People are going to, right? They're going to talk and they're going to say, wow, you seem like you really love your job. You seem really like excited about what you do. You seem like you have a lot of ownership and empowerment in your role. Wow. Do you think do they need it? Are they hiring? They're
Yeah.
like, yeah, we are, but I don't know. It's kind of a tough process to get in, right? It's tough to get a job here. And the A players say, oh, it is, huh? Well, I think I can do that. Where the other people go like, oh, it's tough, huh? I better just stay where I am.
I think too, like the company culture. I always feel like there was a guy who played. I'm up, in Green Bay. Sorry about bringing up Green Bay to you, Glenn.
I'm fine.
Glenn's from Minnesota.
Yeah.
But
Well,
his guy's name is Leroy Butler, and they said about him, Leroy Butler, that he would always make these crazy comments to the press, and they're like, everything he says, it's never as good as it sounds like or as bad as it sounds like with what he's
Mm,
talking about. And I
hmm.
feel like that's with company culture. It's like it feels like a bit if you get on that roll with those A players, that legend and the culture and the talk about the company, it's even going to be sound better than it probably truly is. And then vice versa, if you're going with the B player or the C player, it's
Hmm.
going to be that kind of inverse. Do you see that
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think because I think the hallmark of A companies is that there is a transparency there, and right, it's not someone trying to make hollow promises or put a lot of hype around things. There's a lot of like, look, hey, this is the situation, and there's some tough things here, but here's what we're going to do about it. Here's who's going to do it, and the CEO standing up and saying, hey, I'm accountable for this.
Yeah.
And right, that's a whole different discussion of like, yeah, well, I'd rather know where we are and what we needed to get out of it versus someone who's just painting this rosy picture when we all know it's really not that way.
Yeah. Just be honest with me. Yeah, exactly.
100%. Yeah.
Um, what separates a real strategy from a wish list of goals? I got to hear the
Uh,
answer on this one.
I love that question. So I did, and this is something that I wish I knew as a CEO, because I really believe I could have taken that company a lot further had I really understood the true what it would truly true strategy is. So a strategy is a plan to place your company in a unique, invaluable positioning in the mind of your ideal core client. So to make that practical, what that would mean is that, okay, Greg, I know you told me that one of the things you do or have done is a ghostwriter for books, right?
Right.
And personal, let's say for business books, right? So such that if I were out talking to someone and they said, "Have you, Glenn, have you ever thought about writing a book about your business career as a CEO?" Like, yeah, but kind of always want to do that, but I haven't found the right person to help me with it. They would say, "You got to talk to Greg. Greg is the only guy who can bring your story to life. That's what he does." Like that is strategic differentiation. Because once someone says the only,
Mm,
you've got to go with this person for that need, then you know that I'm going to come to you and say, "Hey, I heard you're the guy that's going to write my book."
right.
Right? I'm not going to shop you out a bunch of other people. I'm not just going to Google you and say, "Hey, I'm talking to four other writers, and what's your price?" I'm going to say like, "I heard that you're the guy I need to talk to."
Yeah. No, I like that. I think that that true differentiation is key, and that a friend of mine, Steve Miller, said people have to know you, like you, and trust you, but they have to remember you.
Yeah.
And that I think that differentiation is how they'll remember you.
Yeah.
What Glenn? Let's see if we can kind of bring this to a head here as we're coming
Sure.
to the top
Yeah.
of the hour.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about the role you see with the CEO in taking this everything to the 10x plus.
Yeah.
What do you see their role as?
Yeah. Great question. So their role is they need to own the culture and the vision, um, and the strategy. So you talked before about being a visionary. That's something they need to own. I'd say their number one accountability is to build an A player leadership team, because that allows them to then lean in what is to do the strategic work, the visionary work, the culture work, serve as an ambassador of the company. And that is certainly right. You're present for the company. You're that visible, but you're also present within the company. And what are you talking about? Well, you're talking about the vision. You're talking about the culture. You're talking about the strategy. And I tell you, the number one thing that's not on that CEO's job scorecard is doing other people's jobs.
Right.
Most CEOs, right, kind of came up through a company, and I was guilty of this too. They came up because they had competence in a certain role. Maybe it was finance, maybe it was marketing or sales or ops. And someone was on our podcast recently. They said, here's what you ask a CEO: you left a job. Why are you still doing it? It's because, right, many CEOs, one of their failings is as they come up, if they hire someone good to take the job that they had, if that CEO decides they kind of want to dive back down in it or try to dictate to that person, if they hired a smart person, they're going to leave, right? Because they're going to say, well, you don't trust me, you don't trust me to do my job. Well, if they didn't hire a good person to fill that job, then this person is just going to be basically turned into a doer that is, well, okay, well, tell me exactly just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
They're not going to be a thinker. They're not going to own the role.
Right. Glenn, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
We could keep going. I know if someone wants to get in touch with you, likes your style, likes where you're going, is interested in hitting that, they're an A player and wants to get to 10X plus.
All right.
How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So our website is apexnorthcoaching.com. I'm very visible on LinkedIn as well, Glen Dall with Apex North Coaching. And just reach out, direct message us. There's a contact form. There's also a downloadable book called The CEO Playbook that's free. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in learning more about this to go ahead and download that playbook.
Oh, okay. Well, this will be recorded and on LinkedIn. You can watch it again, and we'll add a link to that in the show description. So
excellent.
Glenn, thanks for joining us. Just hang on for a second. Let's chat for a minute more. But thanks everybody for joining us on Thought Leaders Live, and we'll catch you in the next show.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate being on.
You bet.